Okay, so this video is going to be talking about the album from Avenged Sevenfold called "Life Is But a Dream." It came out in 2023, the year of this video. Very anticipated album for Avenged Sevenfold fans and for myself, which I do consider myself a huge Avenged Sevenfold fan. So this album is definitely very different from anything in their catalog, and anybody that knows anything about Avenged Sevenfold, their catalog is pretty extensive as far as they have a lot of albums and they have a lot of different sounds through those albums. But with Life Is But a Dream, they definitely took a step forward into prog. They did that on their last album, The Stage, and I was pretty excited for it. Not gonna lie, I'm a prog fan as well. So with Life Is But a Dream, we have, let's see how many tracks we have. Sorry, I'm not really prepared for this video. Um, okay, it looks like there is 11 tracks on this album. Um, and the last one, no, yeah, the last one is just a piano track, but it is, I think it's a really good track. I think it adds to the album for sure. They tried to add a lot of different ideas to this album, um, as opposed to their last album, The Stage. If you've listened to that one, it's all kind of the same theme. This one has a theme as well. It's definitely about death. It's about your ego. It's about existentialism. Probably a good way to put it. But let's see. So with the very first track on the album, "Game Over," um, I think it's about suicide. Is kind of the idea that he was going for there. Kind of how I guess like a character. We're kind of listening from his point of view, kind of just going through life, and you get to the end, and you kind of just wonder like, was that it? Is this all it is? Now that's my interpretation, and I'm pretty sure M Shadows has talked about that. But yeah, so it's definitely tackling heavy stuff. This album for sure. But they do some interesting stuff with this album. So um, they've got an orchestra throughout pretty much the whole album. They've got it on "Game Over." I think Mattel, the very next song, they have it. "Nobody Has It." "We Love You" may have it. "Cosmic" definitely does, and I'm excited to talk about that song. Um, "Beautiful Morning" maybe. "Easier" maybe as well. "G" yes, and "Death" absolutely. And then "Life Is But a Dream," like I said, is a piano track. So there's a couple things about this album. I recommend listening to it start to finish. Um, I kind of do that anyways with a lot of bands that I listen to. I think it's a good approach to a lot of albums. I think people look for singles and stuff like that, but when you get into prog territory, it's kind of like a story um, that you get to go through and see how it progresses. So definitely recommend this album start to finish if you have the time. If not, there's definitely things to do here. There's definitely single type songs that you can just listen to on its own, but they have something later on in the album. They've got a title named G. They have one called Ordinary, and then one called Death. The O in Ordinary is in parentheses, and then D in Death is also, so it spells out God. It's a trilogy kind of song. You want to listen to those in that order. Well, you don't have to. They've definitely written it to where you can listen to it on its own, but it is definitely a great experience to go through and listen to how it rolls into one another. And it tells a pretty interesting story. But yeah, with "Game Over," there's some really cool guitar work, and then it gets pretty heavy. It starts off nice and beautiful, is a good way to describe it. And yeah, they have some really heavy stuff going on in "Game Over." Definitely has some thrash elements to it. Um, the vocals are almost rap like. It's really weird. It's not the tone of rap, but it's very fast. The verses are definitely very fast, and it's kind of sarcastic. There's some sarcastic lyrics in there, but definitely done on purpose. Game Over's a really cool track, and that is a really interesting way to start the album. Um, then they have Mattel, which is probably one of my favorites on the album. This song kind of tackles how materialistic everything is in the world, um, and we get so caught up in purchasing stuff, and it's like, what is real? It's kind of tackling stuff like that. We have all this stuff, but are we just living in a fake plastic world? Essentially, is kind of like what it gets after. Not really doing it justice explaining it, but this is kind of just a raw video. I've never done a video like this. Just kind of giving my thoughts on the album. So I think this song is good for old school Avenged Sevenfold fans. It definitely has prog to it. So if you're not a fan of, you know, weird cutaways, because it has some really strange cutaways towards the end of the song. But I think it does it in a listenable way. It doesn't take away from the song. I think it adds to it. But yeah, it's a good old school Avenged Sevenfold kind of sound. Definitely heavier. Then you have the song Nobody. This was the single that they released a couple months before, and when I initially heard it, I was like, man, what are they doing? And I think that was how everybody kind of reacted to it. Was everybody was just shocked. It was very different for their sound. They had almost what sounded like drum samples that they were using, but it really wasn't. And M Shadows, the vocalist, has definitely gone into detail about how almost everything they did for this album was organic, despite it sounding maybe like samples, which is pretty cool that they put the effort into that. And that's another thing I admire about this band. But yeah, so it's a good song. It definitely took a while for me, and it's kind of the theme of the whole album is who are we at the end of the day? There's so many people that have different stories, but who are we at the end of the day? We're kind of just nobody, really. We're gonna die, and we may or may not be remembered for hopefully a couple years after. But I mean, it's just like people move on, when you die. So who are we really? And it's kind of sad, but it's just kind of what they were going for. It's a good song though. Then you got a song like We Love You. This one is also in my top 3 of this album. This one is very out of the box. They steer away from traditional structures of a song with this one. It'll jump through. It'll just have weird cutaways, and you're just confused the whole time. But the more you listen, the more you can catch on to what they were going for, and it's actually pretty surprising how they pull it all together. I think it's a great track. Then you have something called Cosmic that comes after this one, and this is probably my favorite Avenged Sevenfold song ever. This one is emotional. The guitar solo that leads into this eerie and open, dramatic, slowed down section of this song. Man, it's the first time I listened to it, it was when the album dropped, and I was just laying on my back in bed with my headphones on and dark room, and my eyes were closed, and it was such an unreal feeling. And Avenged Sevenfold pulled it off. They have a very, I would say it's borderline psychedelic, because it's very atmospheric psychedelic kind of sound, but it has traditional horns and stuff like that to accompany it. And yeah, great track. Then the next track is Beautiful Morning. This one is kind of, to me, it sounds like grunge. It kind of sounds like, gives me Alice in Chains vibes for sure, vocally. I think people have compared it to Them Bones, which I definitely hear that inspiration. But to say it's a ripoff, see, I don't like that, and I think that's me just defending Avenged Sevenfold a lot of the times. because on this album specifically, the later half, they do take major inspiration from bands like definitely um, what is that band? Sorry, one second. Okay, sorry about that. They definitely take inspiration from Daft Punk later in this album with a song like Easier and Ordinary. But to say it's a ripoff, you know, it is very similar, and I applaud them for taking the risk of trying new genres. They've definitely done that before. They've done country. They've done kind of electronic. They've had some auto tune in the past. Um, so yeah, they're always evolving, and I applaud them for that. This album specifically, they've taken a lot of risk, and I think they pulled it off well. But to say it's a ripoff of bands, so yeah, with Beautiful Morning, very contradicting of the name. Beautiful Morning, it is a very dark song. Um, Lyrically, I haven't really uh, dug into it that much. I do think his lyrics on this album and then the stage, they get into some deep territory for sure. Some of them are worth exploring deeper. Some of them just haven't really interested me too much. But I think this one is definitely inspired by his DMT experience. I believe I say he, it's M Shadows, the vocalist, and Sinister Gates, the lead guitarist. I think they both experienced some DMT trips, and Beautiful Morning, the lyrics kind of go into being laid on your back by the shaman that they had and basically leaving your body. Um, so it kind of tackles that experience from them, which is really cool. That because they're getting older, you know what I mean. So the more that they get older, the more experience they have in life. And yeah, they're gonna share it. They're gonna be different people than what they were in early 2000s, shredding and you know getting drunk all the time. So now they have families. So it's cool getting their new perspective on life currently where they're at. So that's Beautiful Morning. Easier is man, it's a great track. It's a 3 minute song, but man, it's a really cool thing. They have some auto tune, not auto tune. They have like a vocoder thing that they've got going on. Um, yeah, really cool track. It gets pretty heavy, but it keeps coming back to this digital effect that they have. Kind of sounds like Daft Punk a little bit. And then G is very progressive. I would say it's very Rush inspired. Um, this is a really cool track. So this starts the trilogy of the God thing that they went for, and G is a really cool track. The drumming, Brooks Wackerman does a fantastic job on this track. Um, it's and all of these tracks, they're 3.5 minutes, 3 minutes. It looks like they're not long, so that's kind of different for them too. Because if you want to listen to it all in its entirety, yeah, sure, there's some link to it, but you can listen to it out of context and it still is good. But they prefer, you listen to it in its entirety, and I do too. So um, it leads into Ordinary, which is very much the Daft Punk song of the album. Um, G is supposed to be like actually God's point of view whenever I listen to it. And then it gets to Ordinary, and then it starts getting into like Matt's M Shadows, his obsession with AI and robots in the future. So Ordinary is kind of from the robot's point of view that's like gaining consciousness and is like, do I have a soul? Can I, that it just gets into that territory. It's kind of cool. And then it leads into Death, like back to the game over themes on that one. And it's very Frank Sinatra opera. kind of feel. They've got a big orchestra for that one. Fantastic track. Fantastic track. And then it leads to the last track of the album, which is the title track, Life is But a Dream. And that one is from Sinister Gates himself. He learned piano on this album, I think they said, during the stage to this album. And man, his playing is incredible. Not only is his playing perfect, he wrote it. So everything that you hear on this album, I believe they all composed and their different Pro Tools and stuff like that. So they are actually composing this stuff, and the orchestra that performed on this album, they're playing exactly how they're asking them to. They have different recording techniques throughout the album. They had Joe Baresi produce this album, which man, what a guy! He does Tool, all kinds of progressive stuff as well. So it definitely is good having him for this album. But yeah, this is kind of my choppy discussion slash review. I'll get to a review about this album. But yeah, what a intriguing album. Cool themes, great musicianship, great writing. For an Avenged Sevenfold fan, it's very divisive for sure. If you're on board with what they have, they're very upfront about how this is a different album, and they expect people to, just not click with it, and that's fine. But for the ones that like the prog style, which they are very good at doing, this is a good album for you. I think my overall review, if I had to give it out of 10, I would say it's close to a 9 out of 10. They definitely have some pacing issues, I think. Um, Somewhere in between Beautiful Morning and Easier. It's kind of jarring to listen between those. And I don't yeah, I mean, it's hard to say it's a perfect album for anything. It's really hard to give that score. But I just feel like they need to get a lot of credit for being brave enough to try something like this, because it is very much out of their norm. But I really enjoyed this album. I recommend you listen to it if you haven't already. And once again, this is a video I've never done before this kind of discussion, so I just wanted to try it out, and I know it was choppy, but we'll get better. But yeah, this was a great album. Very excited for this one. I waited, I think, close to 7 years for this album, and now they're back on tour, so that's going to be fun. I'll get to see them later this year. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what the band's got moving forward, because I think they mentioned that they are stepping away from the album format, which is kind of sad. And I think they just they don't want to be tied down to release a new album, because a lot of people were bitching about it during their break away. Um, and they've got families, so we gotta bear with them. To expect all this kind of stuff from musicians at that age, it's definitely different from when they're younger. So I'm excited to see the direction this band goes, especially with Brooks Wackerman as the drummer. I know a lot of Avenged Sevenfold fans out there uh, go on about the Rev, and he was a great drummer for sure. Definitely pushed the band in the direction they needed to go. However, I do think Brooks Wackerman is a better drummer. My controversial take. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Maybe I'll do another one of these later. See ya.